Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to another live stream on this July 4th. It's your host, Danny Hai Fong. As the U.S. is celebrating its formation as a state, it is in a state of endless war, and no clearer is this reality than in West Asia, where a U.S.-backed Israeli attack on Iran brought the region and Israel itself to the brink of disaster. Now Iran is warning Israel that its next attack could be the final one for the Zionist regime, even as Israeli military officials claim this is just phase one of a larger regime change operation. The humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza continues, but so too does the resistance. Hezbollah is resisting disarmament, and the U.S. is signaling that the pretext of a nuclear Iran will continue to fuel more war. Where is all of this headed? To discuss, I have with me three very special guests. First, returning guest, Greg Stoker, former U.S. Army Ranger and host of State of Play on Mint Press News YouTube channel. Greg, good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. And then we have first-time guests. It's been probably, that is a big mistake of mine. We have Manar Adley, founder of Mint Press News. She has been generous enough to publish my work in the past. Incredible commentator and writer. Manar, good to see you.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Of course. And then we have Alina Sinofantos. She's a geopolitical analyst and commentator. Alina, good to see you.
Happy to be back.
Of course. All right, everybody, hit the like button as you come on to boost this stream on this holiday. But let us begin. So I want to actually play a variety of commentaries from Donald Trump himself. I want your assessment of the situation with Iran now in the aftermath of the so-called 12-day war, as it's being called. This is what Trump had to say at a recent rally about the attack that Iran launched on the U.S. airbase in Qatar.
And you saw that just the other day where the missiles are being shot down one after another. You know, they called me to tell me they have to take a shot at us. This was Iran, very respectful. That means they respect us. Because we dropped 14 bombs, they said, we'd like to take 14 shots at you. I said, go ahead, I understand. Can you imagine? They were nice enough. This is Iran, to call me and tell me that they would like to shoot me at 14 times. So they want to shoot us. And I said, go ahead. And they shot 14 high-grade, very fast missiles. And you saw that just the other day.
Then, in the aftermath of this 12-day war, there's been very conflicting messages coming from Donald Trump. This is what he had to say at the NATO summit.
We had a tremendous victory, a tremendous hit. And because of that, I don't think they would have been down there because they knew we were coming. When they knew we're coming, they're not going to be down in that, 30 stories underground. So, no, I think it was just a tremendous victory for everybody, including Iran. Look, they've got a country and they've got oil and they're very smart people and they can come back. Israel got hit very hard, especially the last couple of days. Israel was hit really hard.
So, Greg, how about we start with you on the military side of this? Iran is warning that the next attack for Israel could be catastrophic for it should it start this war again. Your assessment of the situation?
Well, first of all, as much as I loathe the current chief of staff, I do appreciate that he expresses political theater for what it is. Yes, we've been watching these kind of like smoke and mirrors, de-escalation, escalation games between Iran and U.S. and Israel for the past 2 years. If you recall, Israel bombed a Iranian consulate, sovereign territory, Iranian territory within Syria in Damascus, killing intelligence and diplomatic personnel there. And Iran responded in a very telegraphed strike. And also we telegraphed our entire B-2 Spirit bomber mission on hardened nuclear sites in Iran because we told the Russians there so they could get their nuclear scientists out of their plans. And of course, the Russians just signed a 20-year security agreement with Iran. So Iran was warned before our very PR stunt oriented bombing mission that involved 157 aircraft. And then, of course, Iran telegraphed their strike to Qatar. It's all about like de-escalation. But I think what we need to pay attention to now as we watch the situation evolve. The 12-day war is not a conclusion at all. Iran doesn't want a war. It wants sanctions relief. It wants a lot of stuff from the U.S. It was not prepared to fight a high-intensity conflict, just like the United States is not ready to escalate military action. But when we talk about like long-term American led regime change operations, no, we can expect another uptick in violence in the future, and another uptick in the propaganda campaign to manufacture consent for heightened U.S. military involvement. But from the military perspective, objectively, Iran is a non-starter. I was like in Afghanistan in JSOC, Joint Special Operations Command, in 2011, and they were also putting plans in place to invade Iran and to conduct special operations missions in Iran. And it was a no-go then, and we have a lot less power projection now than we did 10, 15 years ago. So what we're going to have to be watching out for is a sustained propaganda campaign in tandem with regime change. And if they can't change the regime to a more Western-oriented government that would be more favorable to us, and isolate and disconnect the security relationship between Russia and China and the Indo-Pacific, they're going to go for regime collapse. And after that, they're going to start looking at Pakistan as well. So yeah, it's the whole regional squabble, and it's not done at all.
Yeah, Manar, how about you? What is your assessment of the situation, particularly if you could talk about, I know Minpress and you have been following the resistance quite clearly, and here Iran was attacked and it did fight back, and now we are at the point where there are more threats being made, yet the ceasefire was asked by Israel. What's your assessment of the situation?
With Greg, that this 12-day war is not necessarily over, and there hasn't really been a concrete conclusion of what we can expect next. And the reason why we're seeing kind of this unhinged behavior from Donald Trump is not because he himself is not like this smart person. I think he's very aware of the decisions that he's making. On one hand, he's being pulled from multiple directions. One of those directions is by his very strong pro-Israel base and pro-Israel advisors, who obviously we know Netanyahu is one of those people who are pushing Trump to expand the war against Iran. I'm of the opinion that Trump personally does not want the war against Iran. And that's why he did kind of create that political theater and, to attack Iran's empty nuclear facilities, to show that the United States really does not want a full-on war with Iran. It was more like just to make his pro-Israel base, his advisors that support this war, and Netanyahu, to make them happy that he's, on their side. But he's also being pulled, being influenced by his actual base and the very big influencers that have for so long supported him. They've supported the MAGA movement. And now they're coming out, to call him out and say that Trump is abandoning his base. And so that's why I feel like Trump is giving us kind of like two different realities and responses about what he really wants to do. An expanded war against Iran would not benefit anyone. Israel obviously is the one that wants this war. They've been wanting regime change in Iran. And, we have in the region many resistance groups that have pledged to join Iran in the war if the United States enters the war. And so this is something that the United States has to consider. I mean, we have the Pakistani Zainabi-Yun group, which is a pretty large resistance groups based in Pakistan. We have the Iraqi resistance group, many of the Iraqi resistance groups, I should say. We have the Yemeni armed forces and Yemen's Ansarullah. We also have Hezbollah in Lebanon, who have vowed to enter the war if the United States expands this war against Iran. And we did see just in this recent 12-day war, the Yemeni resistance groups and armed forces support Iran in the war by firing ballistic missiles. And so Israel right now has suffered a very, very big loss. I mean, the Israeli government did put a censor on its citizens, saying that if they posted any videos and showed any of the destruction in Tel Aviv and all of the areas that were targeted by Iran, that they would be considered an enemy of the state. So we technically don't really know the level of destruction that took place inside of Israel, but we suspect, and we, based on our research at Mint Press, we suspect that it is around 1/3 of Tel Aviv has been destroyed. That is massive. I mean, that will cost the Israeli government, the economy, millions upon millions, if not billions of dollars to rebuild. Iran showed Israel its mighty strength using those ballistic missiles. And it showed just how weak Israel truly is with its, failed defense systems. And so I just don't think that the United States wants to enter this war. And also we have to consider that Iran's homegrown resistance, apart from its military, apart from the government itself, Iran has a 2 million citizen group of men called the Basij who are ready to take up arms from a foreign invader. This is very different from the United States, where we have very high resistance to the war. And a lot of these protests that are taking place in our country are actually coming from active service member. And if we look at the US military itself, we are pretty stretched thin right now. We have, warfare happening and bases across Africa. We're in a supposed war against Yemen. We have the Russia-Ukraine conflict happening. I mean, we have this growing tension with China. The US is just involved in too many things. And so I really do believe that the United States doesn't want a full-blown war of aggression against Iran. But we do have to consider, and I'll wrap it up here, is that while we don't want the war, right? That's what I think. I don't think the U.S. wants a direct war. The United States has been in a shadow war against Iran. Everything that Israel has done against Iran for decades has not been able to happen without the intelligence, the weapons, and the support from the United States. Every single assassination that Israel carried out inside of Iran could not have happened without the help of the United States. All of the weapons that were smuggled into Iran were probably, U.S. weapons that were smuggled in there to carry out car bombings and sabotage there. And we have to remember that, while I still don't believe Trump truly wants a full-on war with Iran, he did carry out the assassination of Iran's general Qasem Soleimani when he was in office before. And who did he thank? He thanked Israel's Mossad. So, it's just really a mystery of what will happen next. But I hope that it won't turn into a full-pledged on war. But I do hope that, our current active duty members and our veterans and the American public continue to say no war with Iran, because really, at the end of the day, all of this is a distraction to the genocide that is taking place in Gaza, the horrific mass slaughter of Palestinians. Our people in Palestine, I'm a Palestinian American, we have lost so much, and we are just, devastated by the death toll, by the starvation campaigns, by the absolute humiliation that is happening. And so Israel is just trying to save face. Netanyahu is trying to stay in office as long as he can by distracting and pulling, the United States into another conflict that nobody wants. And that's why we see a crackdown in these Western countries on dissent, including what's happening this week in the UK with this crackdown and proscription of groups like Palestine Action, and kind of telling us that people like Bob Villan with their chants, death to the IDF, which, by the way, is probably many people's new ringtone right now, that's what we should be afraid of, not the fact that our governments are funding Israel's genocide and arming them to commit these massacres.
Yeah, all very good points. Alina, given what Mara and Greg just said, a lot of people were believing that Iran was bluffing for so many months about Operation True Promise 3. And as Manar just said, this whole idea of death to the IDF, it seems like Iran is almost promising that if this war continues, what do you believe them, and do you believe Iran? And what was your assessment of this entire situation and the connections that you made from it?
All right. So my personal opinion is that I would agree with Manar and Greg that this hasn't concluded. However, I will differ in one aspect, and that's fundamentally when you sit down to consider the economic situation of the United States and Western imperialism as a whole, of which it's drastically collapsing at a rapid rate. And when you consider the era of multipolarity is consistently growing, and the significance of China, the trade war, the tariffs that are currently occurring, and all these proxy wars are occurring that are strategically meant in order to dismantle BRICS, whether it's through Iran, whether it's through Ukraine and Russia. The entire purpose is to completely dismantle, or to a certain degree issue massive blows to BRICS, to the BRI, and to all the promising economic prosperity that comes along with that would significantly diminish imperialism worldwide. So Iran is a major hub, and I've repeated this on copious occasions for those that know me. Iran is it's the economic hub for the BRI, and in many ways of BRICS itself, even though it's just become a member of BRICS. And when you sit down and look at the BRI, it basically, most of the most significant trade routes and energy resources will pass through Iran, but it will also be a sort of a point where the East meets the West, but also connects with Africa, even when it comes to sort of the digital Silk Road as it's known. And as we know, the AI and the future of high tech is also a fundamental piece in the road towards sort of defeating or, sustaining imperialism. And Iran is a very big player in this aspect. And why do I bring this up? If the United States or the West does not try to dismantle or issue major blows to Iran, whether it's through direct war or covert war, in order to bring about some sort of regime change that will favor the West, this will ultimately cause massive issues within the United States and within the West. Because at the end of the day, if Iran is left to be as it currently is, what's going to happen? Iran has proven itself to be a military power. It's proven itself that it's able to defend itself. For the first time in the last 40 years, I would say in the last 8 years in total, we've seen Iran economically begin to prosper and establish economic trade relations with other countries, whether it be China, whether it be Russia, whether it be other countries within BRICS. And this is fundamentally as a result of the reactionary mechanisms that have taken place as a result of sanctions and the sanctions warfare that haven't just been imposed on Iran itself now, but also 25% of the world's population. So now there's no longer any fear for the world's, for other countries around the globe, Russia, for example, being one such example, to collaborate and enter into bilateral trade agreements with Iran. So this is going to bring a lot of economic prosperity to Iran. That therefore means that Iran as an economy, as a structure, will become even more powerful than it currently is. And if these alliances begin to form, and like I said as well, BRICS, it will even encourage the creation of more bilateral trade agreements and the industrialization of the global South. This means that the West is significantly going to lose its war to sustain imperialism. That is why I do not believe they're going to allow Iran to continue to prosper. They will never remove the sanctions from Iran unless it completely subjugates itself to the West and therefore aligns itself with the West, which Iran will not ever do, and rightfully so. And therefore, they're going to continue to target Iran. Now, with regards to everything that kind of took place, there's several things that we have to consider here. So, although the United States is going to continue its direct or indirect war on Iran, it has to factor in several things. So as I think it was recently, in like last week as well, we've seen the fact that they're not even providing certain air defense systems and ammunition to Ukraine at the moment as well, fundamentally because of stockpile limitations within the United States and within NATO as a whole. And this is also why the NATO summit just this week, we saw an increase of 5% now budget, went from 2% to 5% for the vast majority of NATO states. And a lot of the bulk of that 3.5% is going to go directly into the production of ammunition and defense in order to produce air defense systems and everything that essentially need in order to continue the war. Because as it currently stands, the West